his testimony was one of the more pitiful and difficult things that I have ever witnessed in a courtroom. My feeling about what happened at that moment is that Abu Ali knew he was down to begging for his life, and that he was going to have to do something that he didn't want to do, which is say that he had done this crime, which he had not, to my knowledge, ever said before. My belief is that he made that admission to Mr. Zimmerman solely because of that posture of having to beg for his life, and not because it was true.
He doesn't remember anything after the point of taping up Norma Norman. That's the last thing that he can remember. And he has maintained that lack of memory over the entire 16-year period since this crime occurred. It's the one thing he has said over and over again: I don't remember.
No human being deserves to be harmed. And certainly not to the point where Patrick Daniel had to experience. To try to emphasize that even further, I'm struggling because there was a part of me that night didn't know. And that part hurts me also because it leaves unforsurety in my own mind. Did I do it? Or did I have nothing to do with that? I know that that was not on my mind when I went over there.
Abu Ali is a man with a variety of mental illnesses brought about by unimaginable abuse and torture. His lawyer, for whatever reason, didn't care enough to help this client who could not help himself. District attorney didn't seem to care what the facts were as long as he got a conviction. But that's not how our system is supposed to work, is it?
I have never heard a situation as devastating as the one that Abu Ali lived in for most of his life.
I think that his childhood was just one of one traumatic scene after another. It was a weekly thing. It wasn't every now and then. It was a weekly occurrence.
I had a sister who was in and out of psychiatric hospitals, was suicidal and homicidal. Had a brother who physically and allegedly sexually molested several of his 10 children, who ended up killing himself. So these are not happy, well-adjusted people, obviously.
I've heard stories from him being driven to woods and being beaten up, to tying his penis to the doorknob.
And he would do things like beat Abu with his billy club, beat him with a leather strap, ask him to strip naked and force him to stay for hours in a dark closet. He would take a leather thong, soak it in water, tie one end to the end of Abu's penis and the other end to a hook at the top of the closet and allow it to dry and tighten.
Daily cursing of the children. I was told that he cursed his children a lot. She cursed the children a lot.
The saddest things to me was that when he was about to get all over Abu Ali for something, whip him for something, Mom would leave the room and say, "Don't kill my child."
When I was an adolescent and a young child, my concern and my efforts then was being close to nature, because that was the first life form that accepted me without hurting me. And I just attached myself away from the two-legged ones, which are the humans, because they were the ones that was hurting me. And when I say they, I'm not talking about the whole world. I'm talking about the people who were responsible for me at that time, mainly my mother and my father.
These punishments were in response to nothing. If he was 5 minutes late being home from school, he was beaten. If he talked back, he was beaten. If his father was in a bad mood, he was beaten.
Abu Ali's mental illnesses very much played a role in his involvement. And there's no question that a jury could have determined that he is not culpable of capital murder, not guilty of a capital murder, based on his mental illnesses and his mental disability.
The abuse that Abu suffered as a child is well documented. It appears in his school records, it appears in police records, it appears in his service record. It shows up over and over again where someone expressed concern about him, where someone at school or someone on the military base expressed concern. And he was evaluated numerous times. There are pages and pages and pages of mental health evaluation, but virtually no treatment was offered.
What everybody has to understand is to subdue as much as a person can of another's pain. They have to know why that person is in pain. When you finish researching the essence of that pain, then you have a general idea the method that you want to apply to help that person to relieve their pain as much as possible. And again, I'm speaking through experience, what has thus far has been done with me in the last several years. When a person grow up, been brutalized, no one has never attended to those wounds, then that person perhaps was raped, no one attended to those wounds. That person is left in an area of the world where they can become lost. There's no extended hand to pull them up on the cliff.
Of course, a lot of death penalty cases settle because I think when the district attorneys are making a business decision, they know that some of these circumstances are likely to impact at least one juror, and so why go through all this if it's going to have that effect?
I think if a jury had heard about Abu Ali, all the good and the bad, but in context, they would have had a very different picture of this man than the one they were given in that trial.
I think if the defense attorney would have had let everyone know, he would have had a better trial, you know, and everything would have come out better. Instead of death, I think he would have got the life.
It's one of those situations where the prosecution could have just as easily made this case about Deval Miller as they did about Abu Ali. And the question is, why did they pick one versus the other? And the sad answer to that question is because Abu Ali was more vulnerable. He was not defended. He was someone with mental illness. He was somebody who had struggled, and he became a very convenient target, even in the course of assigning who to blame between these two accused.